It's time to talk about the NBA with Brian Geltzeiler. Sirius XM NBA Radio. Find him on Twitter at BGeltzNBA. Hello, Brian.
Good morning. How we doing?
Doing well. Chauncey Billups in trouble for, I guess, playing poker. I don't know about the extent of the poker playing. You got Terry Rozier, who's in trouble. Possibly, gambling on the games, possibly. Now I got, Damon Jones, Tone, who's in trouble? Former Cleveland Cavalier player and coach. Brian, as this continues to roll off all the news, what's the thoughts going through your head?
Well, listen, I think you're looking at although I think Jones and Rozier potentially could be tied to a similar case, Billups it's a separate case. Nonetheless, it's somewhere at some point, I don't know that the timing is a coincidence that it's all being released this morning with some high-profile NBA names attached. But when I look at the Billups case, my first two thoughts is either A, he was asked to cooperate and chose not to, and or there's got to be some kind of major money laundering type of thing attached to where Chauncey Billups was playing at some high-stakes poker games. And this is, maybe him being pushed to cooperate by being arrested and having his name thrown out there and being embarrassed. The Terry Rozier stuff we've heard about for months, and the reality is that the evidence from what we've seen and heard is pretty damning against Terry Rozier. And listen, the Heat were out there trying to trade his expiring deal in the offseason, and generally for a team that wants draft picks, and Heat's willing to trade draft picks, Rozier's deal is, as an expiring deal, can get you off some longer-term money on your books. My point is, it's not an unattractive contract with 1 year left. No one would touch it, and this is part of the reason that no one would touch it. It's been reported today that big parlay bet in a particular game in March of, I believe, 2023, before Rozier was traded, where there was a bunch of massive money on a multi-leg parlay of Rozier unders, and Rozier left that game after 10 minutes with a foot injury. So there's some damning stuff there with him. And then Damon Jones is supposedly providing information. I don't know where that goes, but again, it's a big week for the NBA on a variety of levels. NBA returns to NBC. Amazon is kicking off their coverage tonight. It's a new season with a lot of hype and a lot of interesting stuff going on. And to have this be something that steps in and kind of mars the first week is really, really a shame.
No doubt. That's kind of where we're at, Brian. I did say, to me, if anything, I think this, while some people think this undermines, sports gambling and the trust in it, I said it should be the opposite, because never before have they had such sophisticated measures to crack down immediately on the anomaly bets and the ones that come in. Now, I've also said, Brian, that I thought this was going to be hard to prove when it came to Malik Beasley, who's not been named in any of this today, or Terry Rozier.
Yes.
Because,
by the way, I want to interrupt you. He has not been named yet. It's possible we do hear his name come up at some point.
Yeah, all we had heard was from his agent.
The reason he hasn't been signed to a contract by someone yet. That player played too well last year to still be sitting out there.
Yeah, all we had heard about him was his agent had said that they weren't investigating him anymore. Maybe it's because they did all the investigating they needed and they're putting all the pieces together. Who knows? But, Brian, it's hard to prove this because guys are going to have bad games. We've had jokes all the time for years. Oh, that guy must be throwing the game. He had a bad game. But, if this is as widespread as they're saying, then it just takes some guys to rat on other guys. And next thing you know, you have a press conference coming up in 34 minutes with Kash Patel in New York.
Listen, we're going to get a lot more information, hopefully there. But I do think, guys, this is really important in a story like this. We have to draw the distinction between guys that were a guy like Terry Rozier, who's been accused of being out on an NBA court, essentially underperforming intentionally to benefit gamblers or enriching himself in that way, and a guy like Chauncey Billups that got involved in the wrong high-stakes poker game attached to some of the wrong people. Now, don't get me wrong, Billups should know better.
One of the right high-stakes poker games, Brian.
Well, one of the right high-stakes poker games are the ones that you go playing in an illegal casino. Those are the right ones. And if you can afford them, God bless. Go enjoy yourself. That's what they're there for. But he put himself in a bad spot. I'm not necessarily condoning any of that, but that's also not an integrity of the game issue. I think what's interesting, and I just heard Brian Scalabrine say this on Sirius XM NBA Radio with Frank Isola in the starting lineup, many of these cases, and we saw it with Jonte Porter, and it has to do with the fact of guys leaving games early with injuries. That was a big deal with the Jonte Porter thing. That's what's been with the accusations with Rozier. But I just want to make sure that we're not painting all these guys with the same broad brush in terms of what these allegations are. There's some very different things here between Billups, Rozier, and Damon Jones in terms of what's been reported.
Brian Geltzeiler joining us on the Fan Hotline. Yeah, I mean, these are several good points that you make about this. I got to see more how it plays out here, because I got to tell you, this is my last thing on it, Brian. Like, I made a big deal about it. Like, we had a couple of Guardians pitchers wrapped up in some allegations of throwing errant pitches on purpose for gambling purposes, things like that. And I made a big deal of it at the time. Lima laughed in my face on the air. Now who's laughing, Tone? Now who's chuckling?
I know.
But I said, if this is all true, like you really got to do the most insane thing to a lot of people. Just like, I know we've had like year-long suspensions, 6-month suspensions, things like that. It's like, no, you got to do the whole Pete Rose thing, because I got no problem with making money. I got no problem with business. Your business partners with the gambling entities now, and that's fine, but you're going to have to make sure that everything's on the up and up. There has to be a harsher penalty for all this stuff. I mean, federal charges could end up being a very harsh penalty, don't get me wrong, but when we find out these things about some of the players, it's like, yeah, you know what? Everybody has their day in a court or in their arbitration or whatever. No, this has got to end. You're going to have to just have very harsh penalties for the players.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, part of this is that sports are a public trust, right? And so when you have something like this and you have athletes, and in this case a coach as well, who are wrapped up with people that are engaging in organized illegal activities and organized crime, essentially, that's what we're talking about on listen, and I'm not, it's organized crime on different levels and in different forms, but it is organized crime. When you have that, if you don't want that to exist anymore, these need to be punitive. Listen, here's what's not going to happen, guys. The sponsorships with the online sports bettors are not going away. The sponsorships with the casinos are not going away. Those are only going to grow over time. You'll see it very, very shortly. There's going to be odds back on our screens when we're watching games on TV. That's not going away. What is going to happen here is these guys are going to be punished in a way that's going to be a massive, massive deterrent to anybody ever doing this stuff again. Essentially, what's going to happen here is the FBI, and the NBA would be very smart to work in concert with the FBI here, is to make sure that these punishments and these punitive measures taken against these guys, assuming they're found guilty of what they've done, are going to be something that's going to send a message that's going to make it officially not worth it for anybody to be involved in jeopardizing the integrity of the game or getting involved with people that are involved in organized crime. Listen, for all we know, Chauncey Billups is involved with guys who have been involved with fixing games, even though he had nothing to do with that. So it's the old expression, you go to bed with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And that's kind of where you're at right now. There's a massive message that's going to be sent, but I can promise you this, there is going to be no elimination of online sports betting sponsors for the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, UFC. Go through it all, guys. It's still going to exist, and it's still going to grow.
Brian Geltzeiler joining us here on the show. Cavs lost last night, opening night of the NBA season for the Cavs against the New York Knicks. Some people saying it's an Eastern Conference Finals preview. Now, you can answer whether or not you think it is, but Cavs lost. Some people upset. I'm not that upset as long as they learn that the offense has to run through Evan Mobley to be able to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. One, do you think it is a preview? Two, do you think I'm right in that assessment?
Yes and yes. Listen, yes, I think it's a preview. I think what I saw with Mobley last night, and I do think this gets better with Darius Garland on the floor, is I thought he was left to his own devices to get his own shots a little too much. And he's ready. You can see by certain ways he moves on the floor, certain shots he's added to his repertoire. He looked excellent last night. He just didn't get it enough when the game mattered. And so that to me is something to keep an eye on. The other thing that was interesting, and this may very well be a one-night anomaly, but it was interesting, is I thought the team and Mobley played better with Nance next to him instead of Allen. Now, again, we know Allen and Mobley work very well together. We know Allen prides himself on being a Swiss Army knife that's willing to sacrifice his individual game for the good of the team at any time. So this is not a shot at Jared Allen. down. It's just that what was interesting to me was Nance's added three-point shot and his ability to stretch the floor seemed to create some more room for Mobley to operate inside the arc. And that's something to keep an eye on here with the Cavs. Again, love Jared Allen. This is not a negative on him, but that's something that kind of jumped off the screen to me a little bit last night in watching how all that went. Nance is very switchable on the perimeter and has got good size. I thought that was – listen, the Cavs they're without Garland last night. They're without DeAndre Hunter, who's their best wing. They're without Max Strus, who's probably their second best wing. And, it's going to be – they're going against one of the top two teams in the conference in their building. In the end, if the Cavs lose 15 games this year, all right, this is reasonable for it to be one of them. So I'm not panicked or upset about anything I saw with the Cavs last night. But then those couple of observations, and I do think Nance could be an interesting piece. The other thing was I thought Lonzo Ball fit in well, even though we didn't shoot the ball well. And I think if he starts to improve that shooting a little bit, that's going to also help space the floor as well. Because I do think one thing you saw last night, that with Garland, without Garland, Lonzo Ball's got to play some meaningful minutes for this team. He gives them an element in terms of keeping the ball moving and how he guards on the defensive end of the floor and can guard bigger wings. It's something that the Cavs really, really need. I think Hunter and Ball are both very important players to what the Cavs do defensively this year.
All right, Brian, just the Eastern Conference in general after just a couple of nights. Well, really, they just played last night. But is there any other team? Like, I'm looking at Philadelphia, and nobody knows anything about Joel Embiid and whether or not he's going to be available. You probably side on no come playoff time. But when you see their young talent, who out there in the East do you think outside of New York or Cleveland could be a team to challenge?
Listen, Philly's fun. Let's start there. Philly's a lot of fun. Edgecombe was fantastic last night. Maxey was even better. Maxey looked like he worked on his shooting in the offseason big time and took his game to another level, and the confidence of Maxey is just off the charts. Philly would be quite smart to eat, and they did it last night with Embiid. Make him a complimentary player till he shows you he's not, no matter what you're paying him. And I think the same thing with Paul George. When you look at players of Paul George's ilk, they normally drop off at 35 years old, and he's dropping off. So it's okay to build it around these two young guys, no matter what you're paying them. So, listen, I don't know that Philly's going to be a major contender in the conference, but they're going to be fun. Listen, the team I'm watching that I think everybody is sleeping on in this conference, the Milwaukee Bucks. I think they're much better than people think. They're really deep. Doc does great with a team like this. And in the end, Giannis, we know Giannis isn't happy, but Giannis is also a guy that is such a competitor. His unhappiness is not going to spill into the rest of this team. You almost have a situation right now where these guys want Giannis to stay, and they're going to play their backsides off to see if they can be good enough to get him to stay. And that's a great situation for Doc. I want to point this out about Doc Rivers. I think it's very important. Best season he ever had as a head coach, in my opinion, outside of the Celtics run. But since he left the Celtics, was with the Clippers in 2018-2019 when they took the vaunted Warriors team to 6 games in a first-round series where their best two players were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Danilo Gallinari. Doc does better with a little less talent. And I think Doc's going to do a really good job getting the most out of this group that they built around Giannis here. I think everybody's sleeping a little bit on the Bucks. I really like what I see there.
Brian, thank you so much for the time. Know that was a bunch of curveballs this morning. Thank you very much for answering all the questions. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Always, guys. My pleasure. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Brian Geltzeiler, Sirius XM NBA Radio. Find him on Twitter at BGeltzNBA. Acceptable what he said about Jared Allen? Acceptable what he said about Evan Mobley?
Yeah.
The Evan Mobley thing, that's interesting because I want Darius Garland to take his time. I want him to take his time. Get Evan to be forced to do it, but he is right. Like if they can find that happy medium where Darius isn't taking too much, it could be a lot better for Evan Mobley.
Yeah, the way that I think this year is going to be truly used is to figure out what the hierarchy is when it comes to those guys and the shots that they're going to get. Because you saw it last night, like Donovan, very quiet. They were letting Evan, spread his wings a little bit. Next thing you know, Donovan's in the third quarter is like, all right, I got to take over. Mm-hmm. And he did. And then what do you do in the fourth? And that's without Darius. And these are good problems to have, by the way. I want to make that abundantly clear. The fact that we have enough guys that we can talk about who gets the shots. They're a very talented team, but come playoff time, like you had Darius Garland last night in the interview say, I couldn't even walk. in the playoffs. Yet he got more shots than Evan Mobley. How can the guy that can't walk get more shots than Evan Mobley? It's a problem.